Thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. From websites and online stores, Squarespace is the all-in-one platform to build a beautiful online presence. Hello friends, I hope that you've been well, and thank you so much to everyone who's been enjoying the Zodiac Portrait series so far. I have Capricorn and Aquarius up. We are going to take a little bit of a break and we are going to be working on something else for today's video. I have started a portrait series of characters from the animated series Avatar: The Last Airbender. This is one of my favorite shows of all time, so it's been long overdue that I revisit some of these beloved characters for some fan art, and I am going to be drawing Toph in today's video. If you're not a fan of the series, I think you'll still enjoy today's video because you'll still see the process of me working on this piece, from taking it from the digital version into a marker and colored pencil illustration. And here you can see I'm working on Procreate on my iPad. I get performance anxiety when it comes to sketching, so this is all I have for you, unfortunately. I have already worked on Aang and Katara, and then I actually managed to finish Zuko and Sokka after filming the Toph process, so stay tuned for them. But basically, after I finish and finalize the sketch digitally, I print it out onto just regular copy paper, and then I use my light pad to sketch my digital version and transfer it onto the new paper. So in this case, it is into my marker sketchbook. And this way, I'm able to have a really clean sketch to work from when I start coloring. And in the digital phase, I'm able to really explore lots of different poses and ideas without it messing up the final paper. And so this is the type of process that I do for most of my illustrations. And so here you can see the final sketch is all done. But before we start the coloring, I just want to take a moment to thank today's sponsor, Squarespace. I'm sure that many of you are fellow artists yourselves, and I think the really big highlight for Squarespace is being able to have a portfolio for all of your best work. And so for me, I have a various different series of illustrations that I like to kind of categorize together. In this case, I have a series where I did my monthly favorites for 2022 and 2023. And what is amazing is that you can actually edit the photos directly on Squarespace, which makes it so much more streamlined so that you can present your work in the most consistent and professional way as possible, which is important for me because I actually have to photograph my work as opposed to a digital artist, which you can just upload the file to. So if you're interested in launching your own website, head over to squarespace.com for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/imawonder for 10% off your first website or domain. And back to our illustration. So now we are going to start coloring with the alcohol markers. And the thing about alcohol markers is that they are a lot faster to work with for me, but they are definitely much more unforgiving. And so selecting the right colors is extremely important. I have the swatches kind of on the cards that the markers came with, but I also make sure to swatch them on the actual paper that I'm working on as well, because the thing is, the markers will look a lot different from what they appear on the cap, from what they look like on different types of paper as well. And the thing is, it is a transparent medium. And so once you put that marker down onto the page, it's much more difficult to lighten or alter the color. With alcohol markers, you can layer them, and I do use that technique throughout the process of my marker illustrations, but you can only take it so far, and typically you're only able to kind of go darker or like shift the hue slightly. So be careful about going too dark too early, and definitely make sure you're swatching throughout the process when you're using alcohol markers. Thankfully, they are something that I've become quite familiar with, so I'm able to be a little bit more confident in just sort of going in, but I still make sure to swatch just to be safe and have my digital version of the color palette ready for reference, just in case I want to make sure that the colors are going to look good together. But the thing about digital is you can't translate the colors perfectly. So you do have to kind of problem solve your way if you can't find the exact color. And the thing that I always talk about with my personal marker process is that I kind of go for like a paint by numbers method as opposed to doing a lot of blending. So here you can see I'm actually experimenting with layering the different greens on top of each other because, like I said, with the digital version, I'm trying to match the colors as close as possible, but you're never going to be able to get it exact. But I found that with layering this kind of vibrant green with the olive green, I was able to find like a happy medium because with Toph, her color palette is obviously very earthy since she's an earthbender. And with this version of my interpretation of the character, I'm going for a modern version. So I'm changing the character design a little bit from her original costume, but I still want her to be recognizable so that fans can, see that it's actual fan art and not just an original character. So I found that I wanted to pay attention to her original color palette in her character design, but I find her color palette is just not something that I typically would go for. And so working with the kind of beigey yellow and the green was quite challenging for me to make it work with my personal style, because I really wanted these portraits to be really colorful and fun and vibrant. And like I said, her color palette is quite earthy. So I needed to introduce another color that would complement these greens and beiges. And what ended up actually happening was I remembered from a couple of my pieces that I did for I think it was my February 2022 monthly favorites page, where I had used earthy greens with like pastel purples, and I was really surprised at how well they worked together. So in referencing my own, previous color palette that I used, I introduced purples into this Toph color palette, and I think it worked fairly well at adding a little bit more fun color to the mix of this color palette, but still retaining the kind of green forward color palette for Toph. And if you are familiar with my work, I've done a number of portrait series like this for other series. I've done My Hero Academia, I did Demon Slayer, I've done Jujutsu Kaisen, and now with Avatar: The Last Airbender. And with the previous series in this kind of style, I was using 2 different light sources for the portraits to give it a lot of punchy color. And I really liked the way that those looked, but I felt like with this time around, with this series, I wanted to do something a little bit different just to mix it up. And also, I feel like with these characters, it's just like such a fun show. So this time around, I decided to choose one colored light source and then add all of these extra design elements like the starburst and the confetti and little like kind of sticker motifs to mimic the stickers and band-aids that I have on the actual characters. And that way the background isn't just one solid color, and I think it creates a lot of energy and life in these portraits. And another point of difference that I decided to do with these portraits in comparison to my previous ones is that in my previous ones, I would do the alcohol marker flats, and then I would use fine liners for a lot of the line art, and then use colored pencils to do further rendering. But I've been really enjoying using colored pencils more in my pieces to give the artwork more texture and just give it a little bit of grit. So these portraits, I decided to not use any fine liners at all and just exclusively use the colored pencils for the line art. And I will say that it does honestly hurt my hand after a while, just because I have a really, really heavy hand. So I find that I press really hard and I'm like gripping the pencils really tightly. But the result, in my opinion, turns out really well. And I just like how it gives it a slightly different feel and look because the alcohol markers are generally quite smooth. So I like the little bits of grit that the colored pencils give to the drawing. And then to speak on actually the translating of these avatar characters into my own style, with my versions of fan art, I'm always trying to put a little bit of a different twist on it. And to me, that's the joy of making fan art, is taking these characters that you love and interpreting them in your own aesthetic and vision. And with Avatar: The Last Airbender, this is a series that I've raved about for many, many years. I have been a very long time fan, and I've actually done Avatar fan art over the years, but it had been a while since I had done any, so it felt really fitting to do an update on these, especially since I will be tabling at Emerald City Comic Con this weekend. By the time this video is out, I think I will basically be there. And so if you are attending, I hope you pop by the table and come say hi. But yeah, the original voice actors for these characters were told to be guesting at Emerald City Comic Con. So I was like, this is the perfect opportunity for me to do these portraits. And I really wanted to make sure that they were recognizable, but put them in modern clothing and in just like a new kind of look. And I also wanted to make them just like a little bit older as well. So with Toph, like I mentioned earlier, I think the key element here is her color palette, as well as, of course, the hair and the headband. I originally had toyed with the idea of doing something different with the accessory in her hair. I originally thought maybe she would have like a hat on or like sunglasses, but with Toph, I find that this headband with the little poofs on either end really signify that it's Toph. I found that when I took that away, and on top of the fact that I gave her different clothes, really didn't read as her. So I ended up keeping that particular accessory basically the same, because to me it was very important to make sure it still looked like her. And then when it came to the clothes I wanted to give her, we all know that Toph is definitely a little bit more sporty or athletic, I guess, in terms of her personality. I definitely wouldn't see her wanting to wear any clothes that felt too fussy or overtly feminine. And in the current fashion scape right now, I feel like wearing sports jerseys is quite popular, and it feels really fitting for Toph, in my opinion. I could totally picture her wearing like a sports jersey with like big oversized jeans or cargo pants or something like that. So I felt that was the perfect way to dress her in a more modern setting. And as an extra nod to her in the series, I gave her a little like blind bandit patch on the jersey. And with the posing, I knew I wanted it to feel playful, because Toph is definitely someone who isn't super concerned about appearing proper or pretty or anything like that. But of course, she's super cute. So that's why I decided to go with this expression. And that is essentially my key pieces of advice when translating a existing character into your own style and aesthetic. It's something that I often get asked about because I do a lot of fan art, but I make a point to, do the characters in a style that's more suited to my work, as opposed to creating fan art that is a copy of the original style that they come from, and also inputting them in a more modern setting or twist. Is really pay attention to the key elements of their character design that makes them recognizable, and also really think about what their personality is like and how you want to portray those personality traits into your own version of this character. And also, at the time of this recording, the live action version of Avatar: The Last Airbender would have dropped at this point. And while Toph is not in the first season of the series, I wanted to give my spoiler-free first impressions. So I've seen the first episode at the point of this recording, and I've got to say, it is not great, but it also could have been worse. Prior to going into watching the episode, I tried to avoid too many spoilers or opinions on the internet about it. I have now since seen the discourse, and it seems like a lot of people are quite mixed on it. Some people think it's awful, and then some people think it's okay. For me, I think that in terms of the first episode, there is so much exposition happening and not a ton of like building out who these characters are in terms of like their personalities, which I think is so important to the series because that's what drives the endearing elements, and what makes the series so special is how invested you become in these characters and their story. And this just feels like they are more focused on the plot and hitting certain elements or moments that have to happen in order to like hit all of the just like plot points, as opposed to building these characters and letting us as the viewer find out this information naturally over the course of the series. It's a lot of telling and not showing, unfortunately. And so the pacing feels weird. The dialogue is super awkward. And yeah, I just feel like it doesn't have the same amount of life that the original one does. And to me, it just solidifies my stance on the fact that animated content just does not translate the same in live action. And I don't know why we keep trying to do it. I personally think that animation is a beautiful way of storytelling, and I don't see why we need live action versions of these pieces of media that are essentially perfect the way that they are. But I would honestly love to hear what you guys think about it. Let me know in the comments your thoughts on this live action version, or how much you love the original. I love talking about Avatar, so let me know how you feel about it. But back to the little final touches on the actual artwork here. Something that I also decided to introduce was using paint markers, just to give it these little extra bits of, again, more differences in texture and color. So that was just a nice little touch that I decided to do. This is the aftermath of my desk, just tons of art supplies everywhere. But yeah, that is the final result. I think she turned out quite cute. I hope my Toph fans in the comment section enjoy her. And here are the other Avatar The Last Airbender characters that I've done. I am generally fairly happy with how they turned out, and I hope that you enjoy them as well. I'm going to definitely list them in my online shop as prints when I finally do open my shop up again, which will probably be after Emerald City Comic Con, of course. And so yeah, that is going to be it from me. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye!